What is going on, YouTube? My name is Twitchy Tango, and I've got something I want to say and do today. Something I've been wanting to do for a while, but I haven't had the time to do. It's something good, it's something great, it's something that means a lot to me. And before we dive in, I want to thank Avalanche Jared for allowing me to use some of his footage from his Resident Evil retrospectives because I myself couldn't record any of my Resident Evil games because of the limitations of the PS1. I don't have an HDMI cable port to do what I want to do, but hopefully within the next few weeks I'll be able to get that because I want to live stream some Resident Evil. You know what I'm saying? That being said, I want to discuss what Resident Evil means to me. Resident Evil has been something I've always enjoyed and loved ever since I grew up playing it on the Nintendo 64. And we're gonna dive right in and discuss what that means to me, and it seems like it means a lot of ways to a lot of fans, and that's really all it is. So let's jump in and discuss what Resident Evil means to me. Catch you guys shortly. Resident Evil started for me way back in 2000 of March. Can't tell you the day, but I can definitely tell you it was March of 2000. My cousin brought over two games to play on my Nintendo 64. We were at my grandparents' for the weekend, and that was Resident Evil 2 for the Nintendo 64 and Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. And I had a bit of learning curve trying to understand Legend of Zelda, but I was immediately raptured by Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 2 came at me at a time when I was literally scared of anything and everything horror related. I couldn't sit through Dawn of the Dead without getting scared. I couldn't watch any of Friday the 13th films. I couldn't watch Nightmare on Elm Street or Halloween without getting scared or having some sort of bad dream. But Resident Evil 2 somehow helped me get over that hump. My cousin is the reason I have this love for Resident Evil. We've always played the Resident Evil games. I remember fond memories of playing Resident Evil 4 with him and taking turns every time we would die, which wasn't often, mind you. We were pretty good at by then. We had become seasoned Resident Evil veterans, even though that was a complete change from the dynamics of the first three games. Resident Evil 2 helped me overcome my fears. I remember playing that Friday afternoon, uh, starting Leon's campaign because I was like, I like this guy. He's a cop. He seems pretty cool. It seems pretty chill and legit. And I remember staying up till 5 o'clock that morning to finish it on my first playthrough. My 7-year-old mind, because I was 7, I was able to do these complex puzzles, overcome the odds, and get out of Raccoon City. And after some much needed rest and relaxation, I ended up starting Claire's that night, but not playing as long because I wanted to take my time. I thought I even knew what was going on. I thought I knew what I was getting into. Little did I know the entire uh, atmosphere changed. I recall one event where I was going to a locker as Leon and picking up two items, and when I had come back to that same area as Claire, both items were gone, severely handicapping me. And that's where this famous zapping system has come into play, and it's probably one of my favorite things about Resident Evil 2 is when you can pick up items in one scenario and they will either be changed, moved, or gone altogether. I'm sadly disappointed that remake didn't have that zapping system, which would have done so well in the second scenario. Resident Evil 2 on the Nintendo 64 is what started it all for me into the survival horror genre. And it got me over my fears of a lot of things. And the more I play into it, the more I dive into Resident Evil, the more I get excited to fight this next big threat of destroying the world. I eagerly await to see what the info is on Resident Evil 8, but Resident Evil 2 for the Nintendo 64 is where it all started for me. Claire, Leon, their stories were fun and engaging, and I loved everything about them. Leon being this young naive cop who just so happened to be late because his girlfriend broke up with him and he got drunk and was late a day. Had he been there on time, he would have been dead with the rest of them. Marvin being one of my favorite side characters, then you have to go around and have to fight him back and kill him because he reanimated. Gunshop Kendo right at the beginning. I was playing as Leon. I was like, okay, this guy seems pretty chill and relaxed. He's gonna be fun. And the moment you stop talking to him and you get away for a second and go pick up ammo, the hordes devour him. But he leaves you a parting gift, such as a shotgun, which became my go-to weapon when I was fighting the bosses, as well as that beautiful, beautiful Magnum. Another good thing I loved about Resident Evil 2 was the extra mode. Sadly, Nintendo 64's mode did not have the extra battle mode, but it did have Hunk and Tofu. Hunk was hilarious. I couldn't get enough of Tofu uh, and Hunk. Hunk was this badass umbrella guy trying to get out of Raccoon City to bring vials of supplies, and Tofu was just this thing of tofu that was killing zombies with knives, and I never understood anything about it. Like, I didn't get the funniness of it, but I thought it was hilarious nonetheless. And Claire's story, having to find her brother Chris, who I knew nothing of at the time because I had never played the first Resident Evil, looking for her brother Chris to find out what happened to him, and seeing her go throughout and interact with other characters that Leon didn't interact with, such as the police chief Irons. Even she interacted with Marvin, interacting with Annette Birkin, and Sherry, who is probably hands down one of my favorite characters of the Resident Evil franchise, who matured and grew up to fight bioterrors. Uh, Resident Evil 2 has always resonated with me. Even the remake, though it hit some notes, wasn't quite the same as the impact Resident Evil 2 on the Nintendo 64 had for me. And I love everything about Resident Evil. It's the franchise, it's the monsters, it's the plot that seems outrageous at times, but generally finds that the villains are even more over the top. And that's another thing I love about Resident Evil is how the villains are kind of over the top. You got Wesker, you got the Ashford twins, and you got Ada when she was sort of the pseudo bad guy. You had the Las Plagas and the Los Illuminados. You know, all these over the top villains that just kind of felt right at home in this series and this franchise, and the side characters being some sort of goofy parody of something or another. I particularly like Marvin. He was this moral compass in Outbreak, and he tried to help his friends and try to save everyone. I'm always been a fan of the survival horror aspects because it's one of the better series that does it right. If you don't include 5 and 6, having to manage your resources and ammo, making sure you have enough to outlast the monsters and the hordes. But again, I wouldn't actually get to play another Resident Evil game till one of the probably the biggest ones to ever be released happened to be on the GameCube, which was originally named Dolphin, if you didn't know the code name. Also, Nintendo 64 was supposed to have a port of Resident Evil 3, but because the sales of Resident Evil 2 underperformed, we never got it. It would later be re-released on the GameCube as well as Resident Evil 2 with full analog support. But for me, one of the biggest games I ever played in my young life just so happened to not just be Resident Evil 2, but another big one as well happened to be Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4 for me was badass. It was Leon again. There was no Claire, there was no secondary character except Ashley, which you had to defend. But Resident Evil 2 and 4 had one of my favorite characters, which so happened to be Leon Scott Kennedy. It was been years since the Fallen Umbrella. They have a backstory detailing what has happened to Umbrella and the world that has followed. And Leon's this badass government agent that's tasked with the job to save the president's daughter. And of course, in Hollywood action guy fashion, he does it and then some. He's smart. He's definitely different from who he was in Raccoon City. Got some smart tones to take with all the villains. The Big Cheese, Salazar, all of the Los Illuminados just failed in comparison to just how good Leon had become and how badass he was. There was just something about seeing Leon in Resident Evil 4 that just had me all excited and feel good. Resident Evil 4's Leon was completely different from his counterpart in Resident Evil 2 because he had been hardened by what he had saw at Raccoon City. He even became more of a drunk. And it helped shape the man who he was. You look at Chris and see he's always been the poster boy for what's good and right. But Leon's always been the poster boy for what can go right and what can go wrong. He's allowed the world to shape who he is. He's allowed the things he's seen to dwarf his view of reality. And we got to see that in Vendetta. We got to see a Leon who had become disenfranchised with the world and what he was doing, that he had long since forgotten what he did this for. Leon has always been my guy. He's always been the guy I looked up to out of all the characters. Ada, Chris, Claire, Jill, Wesker. He's always been the one that I look up to and admire because he's always been at the forefront of most of these epicenters. He's been the main character of at least 2 games. And if you include 6, that was mostly his story. I've always been in love with the franchise Resident Evil. I've always been captivated by the characters. And Leon has had some pretty shitty side characters, that's all I'm saying. He's got the bad end of the deal. He got the bad end of the stick. You know? Leon has always been the go-to guy, the hero, the legend, the man, the myth. And he's always been part of the reasons I keep going back to Resident Evil in this series, because Leon is the poster child for Resident Evil. He is the main face. He's been on the majority of the titles and covers, and he's been the main character of 2 movies. I don't consider Vendetta him a main character because he shared it with Chris and Rebecca, but it's just how I view it and see it. I've always loved Leon. I've always been captivated by his story and how he's come from this naive cop to where he is now. And it's getting exciting to see him more and more. And I'm hoping with Resident Evil 8 we get to see it. I hope we get to see some resolution to his and Ada's story. I hope we get to see more of Leon. I know that'd be playing a little too safe, but the one thing about Resident Evil is these main characters have a lot of plot armor. They never suffer any terrible fate. They never die. They're always safe. And I'd like to see the next Resident Evil to go push the boundaries of that. You know, what if one of our main characters isn't really that safe anymore? Revelations 2 kind of left it up in the air that Barry and Claire cannot be safe. But I can go into another video. Resident Evil has been my franchise to go to. I go back to it more than I do any other game. I have almost every title of Resident Evil in my collection, even the remakes and the remasters. I have all of those. And if that tells you something about me as a fan for Resident Evil, it should. I love Resident Evil. It is my bread and butter, and it will always be my bread and butter. It'll always be the franchise I go to when I'm in a bad mood or I'm not feeling myself. And Leon being the badass guy who took down an organization that's pretty nasty. Fucking Salazar. Can't stand that man. I usually carry a rocket launcher and just one-shot him. That's how it be sometimes, guys. That's how I do what I do. Leon's been my guy. Claire has been my best girl, you know, and I've always will go back to Resident Evil. I will always become enraptured by it. Even though sometimes we'll stray from its roots, I will always go back to it. I will always play it. I will always enjoy it. That being said, this video has come to a close, sort of. You wait to the end of this clip, there will be a little outro video of me, yourself, in the face of reality, sure. But I just want to hear your guys' thoughts and feedback. What do you feel is, Resident Evil for you? Who is the character you resonate with more? Like I've said, Resident Evil 2 and 4 is what resonate with me. Resident Evil 2 is where it started for me. But if you guys want to see more, let me know. Hit that subscribe button, turn that notification bell on. Be sure to follow me on all social medias. And tell me your thoughts. What is your most hated Resident Evil? What is your most beloved Resident Evil? Who is your most hated character? Who is your most loved character? Let me know in the comment section below, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. I want to give a shout out to all the YouTubers of the Resident Evil community that make Resident Evil fun to watch. That is Spear Hunter, Avalanche Jared, for whose footage I used, Scorpion, and Where's Barry. They make Resident Evil fun. They make it entertaining to watch, especially the Spear Hunters and Avalanche Jareds. Their perspective of Resident Evil is always good to know, that even though they're diehard fans, they can definitely give the criticism that it sometimes needs. Where's Barry I've always enjoyed his live streams and his videos that he's done. I subscribed to him earlier this year. He has been quite silent since then, but also Scorpion is also another outstanding Resident Evil YouTuber that talks about other stuff other than just Resident Evil, but he does a really good job of it. That being said, this is the end of the video. If you guys like what you see, subscribe, hit that notification bell, follow me on all the social medias, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Take it easy.